What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and in this video, I want to talk about how Marvel could roll Adam Brashear or Blue Marvel over into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So a lot of you guys have been asking me about this really before I even referenced it in the previous video that we did. And originally I was going to throw this up on Saturday, but I really want to talk about it. So Blue Marvel is a really cool character. Like Adam Brashear is one of the coolest characters out there. If you guys thought Black Panther was cool, he's got nothing on Adam Brashear. Adam Brashear is wildly interesting because one, he's like a super genius, and two, he's really, really powerful. Now, we're like previous videos that we've done, like the Living Tribunal, where that focused on things like explaining the nature of energy and stuff like that in Marvel Comics. What this one is going to do is this is going to focus more on like in-universe history in Marvel Comics, which I think people like more. I think people dig that kind of stuff more. Like, how did Wolverine become Wolverine? What was he doing over the time, like over the course of his life? Like that kind of in-universe history, not really publishing history, but still. And so Blue Marvel was a guy who was made by Kevin Grevioux, right? Like Kevin Grevioux is this guy. He went to Howard University. Dude, this guy is a genius, man. Like if you go and you look up Kevin Grevioux, the guy's got like all these degrees in science and stuff like that. Like what is it? Like biochemistry and like molecular biology and things like that. The dude could clone people if he wanted to. It's crazy how smart like Kevin Grevioux is. But he's one of those guys where you know him if you saw him, but you may not recognize the name. He like spearheaded the whole Underworld movie series and different things like that. But he created Blue Marvel. And Blue Marvel is basically a character who was intrinsically tied into the civil rights movement back in the day, and then in turn had kind of like vanished for a number of years. What Marvel does from time to time, for those of you guys who are new here, what Marvel will do is they'll offer something called a retcon, retroactive continuity. And what it means is Marvel will say, here is how things have been for the last 30 years in publishing history, but we're going to change that now with this one thing. With Blue Marvel, it was the same way, and we'll talk about why here in a second. But he is a guy who, in a lot of ways, is like one of the mini allegories of Superman that Marvel has. People get mad when you say that, but it's because it's true. Like Hyperion is the closest thing Marvel has to Superman, but like the Century Robert Reynolds, Blue Marvel, and there's a handful of others who are basically Marvel Superman because they don't really have anything outside of what Superman has, right? Like how they have their powers might be a little bit different, but at the end of the day, their powers are still the same. They wear a cape, they wear boots, they have the belt, the utility belt, or what passes for the utility belt. They kind of wear underwear or something akin to underwear on the outside. They're basically pastiches of Superman. But when it came to the whole idea of Adam Brashear, he actually originated in his own solo series, or really a mini series called Adam, the Legend of Blue Marvel. And this is the coolest thing in the world. So this basically picks up in the aftermath of like Civil War, right? Like Civil War ends, and like Iron Man and Reed Richards and all those guys, basically Captain America loses, superhuman registration goes through, and you've got like Carol Danvers' Mighty Avengers, and you have like the actual main Avengers themselves, and Iron Man still director of S.H.I.E.L.D. And so what happens is that like out of nowhere, this guy Ant-Man just shows up and crushes like the Avengers and Mighty Avengers, just like readily decimates them. And it's insane. Like, and we're talking about some powerhouses here. I mean, you have like Ant-Man and you have like Ant-Man Hank Pym. Ant-Man Hank Pym in Marvel Comics, as much as I love Michael Douglas and as cool as Paul Rudd is as Scott Lang in the MCU, Hank Pym is pretty much useless. He can grow like really tall, he can shrink really small, and backhand his wife, and that's it. Like that's the only things he can, and suffer from an identity crisis, and go through like 5 different names for his character. He's kind of a useless guy. But then you've also got like Black Widow, who really can't do a whole lot either. I mean, like she can punch and shoot stuff, and get killed by Captain America. In Secret Empire, but still, but then you have like She-Hulk, and you have like the Century Robert Reynolds, and you've got Ares, the God of War, and you've got like these insane powerhouses, and like Ant-Man just like steamrolls them all. He's like, I've only got minutes left. He's like screaming about it. He only has a couple minutes left, or moments, or whatever it is, and like as soon as he appears, like he's gone. He vanished. And like Robert Reynolds' of Century is just like, I've never fought anyone that powerful, and I fought World War Hulk, so like I fought some pretty damn powerful guys, and it's just like, damn, like it's insane. Although maybe this took place before World War Hulk, now that I think about it. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, so after that, Iron Man's like, okay, we have to figure out who this guy is, because Ant-Man had referenced Blue Marvel. And it's like, he's like, okay, we'll start with Blue Marvel. Like, we have no idea who this guy is. Now, keep in mind, Iron Man's director of S.H.I.E.L.D. at this point. So Iron Man's like, okay, we'll use my S.H.I.E.L.D. resources and we'll try to figure out what's going on. Everywhere he looks, he ends up with like a brick wall. Like the head of the world's highest ranking intelligence agency. S.H.I.E.L.D. taps into the NSA. NSA, the FBI, the CIA, these unidentified intelligence organizations. I mean, they tap into like every single intelligence group out there. And every time he looks up Blue Marvel, he gets nothing. Like, it's like he doesn't exist or is classified above top secret. And so it's just kind of like, damn, like who the hell is this guy? And so like Tony Stark's wondering the same thing. He's like, who the hell is Blue Marvel? Like, what's going on here? All right, and so what you end up doing is you transition and you get this kind of flashback, right? Like you get this point where you jump back to 1962. All right, we're in the midst of the civil rights movement in the United States. So Blue Marvel's facing off against Ant-Man. And Blue Marvel successfully defeats him. Now, as you're watching the fight between them, like Kevin Grevioux writes it in by virtue of the press kind of explaining what's going on, that basically Blue Marvel's the good guy, right? Like he was a superhero before the Fantastic Four, before the X-Men, before the Avengers, before Iron Man, all that stuff. He was the first superhero in Marvel Comics. He predates Robert Reynolds, as far as I'm aware, because of how the story's written. And so like he's facing off against Ant-Man, but Blue Marvel saved the world countless times. So everyone's like, yeah, Blue Marvel, you got this, that kind of a thing, cheering him on. Defeats Ant-Man. But in the battle, his suit was damaged. And when he basically when he's like, okay, fine, we're done, he gets up out of the rubble, it's revealed that he's a black guy. And like people start to freak out. And so it's just like what in the hell? And then from there, what you do is you basically, you pick up with President John F. Kennedy asking him to step down. So it's like, damn, like they asked him to step down because he's a black guy? Like what the hell? And so like, then you pick back up in the modern day. And so Tony Stark's going around and trying to find like all these people, right? He hits up Dum Dum Dugan, who was, who has the Infinity Serum, so he's basically immortal so long as he consumes it. And he's like, hey, look, like we were all monitoring Blue, we were all keeping an eye on him, but we never had a reason to question him. Like Nick Fury, myself, like all of us, the Howling Commandos, the CIA, the FBI, like we knew of him, but we never had a reason to question him because he was saving the Earth. So like we weren't gonna scoff at that. If you're looking for him, you should stop. Like you should stop looking for Blue Marvel, because the further down this rabbit hole you go, Tony Stark, the more eyes you're gonna draw on, and you're gonna start drawing the attention of people that you do not want to have. Like you do not want their attention, because you're director of S.H.I.E.L.D., sure, but the buck doesn't stop at you. The buck doesn't even stop at the president of the United States. There are people out there who are pulling the strings, and you'll never know their names and you'll never see their faces, but they can bring everything you know and love crashing down. And it's like, damn, like, dude, this is bonkers, man. And so like Tony Stark ignores it, right? He's like, whatever. So he starts going on the hunt. Eventually he discovers who I think, if I remember correctly, I think was one of the president's joint chiefs of staff, one of Kennedy's joint chiefs at the time that Blue Marvel was asked to step down. And this guy was racist as hell. And so like Tony Stark's like, okay, give me the whole explanation here. So this guy goes through like the whole expose, right? Goes through like the whole explanation. Come to find out, on the back end, the federal government was terrified of Blue Marvel. Like they were horrified of him when they realized that he was a black guy. And the reason why was because like at that time in the civil rights movement, the United States was probably as close as it had ever been, up until right now anyway. It was as close as it had ever been to a second civil war that was going to be like, the lines were going to be drawn based on race. So it was going to be like minorities versus majorities. And that would have been it, minorities versus white folks. The response to the federal government was, we have to find a way to like get rid of Blue Marvel. We can't kill him because everybody knows he's a black guy now. And if we kill him, then it'll look like the federal government's cracking down on African Americans who are doing anything to try to rise to power. So like, we'll literally doom ourselves if we do that. But we can't let him stay a superhero, because if he does, maybe he'll ally himself with the black community. And if that happens, like, what are we going to do to stop him if he decides to take out the president or take out Congress or the Supreme Court or all of the above? Like, our weapons won't work against him, tanks, missiles, the whole 9 yards, shy of nuking the country, and that might not even succeed. There's no real way to take him out. And so like at the end of the day, it came down to politics. Now, some of it was also super racist too. Like this one general in question or whatever it was, he was like, look, if we're going to have a superhero that's going to represent the United States, it ain't going to be a black guy. And so like, it was stuff like that. And it was just like, damn, that was crazy. So ultimately Kennedy asked Adam Brashear to step down, gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and said, you're not going to want for anything. We'll make sure you're taken care of. So Adam Brashear steps down. And that's why you never saw him when like Tony Stark first became Iron Man and Bruce Banner first became the Incredible Hulk and all that kind of stuff. From there, Iron Man deduces that that's how Project Wide Awake came into existence. And this is the cool thing. This is Project Wide Awake is one of my favorite things in all of Marvel Comics. Okay, so wind the clock back to Uncanny X-Men 134, 135 by Chris Claremont. All right, as a writer, Chris Claremont always focused on the idea, on the notion of like, let's build the X-Men mythos. That was this whole thing. Like, we're not gonna do what Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did and just be like, here's a team of people with powers. Like, it wasn't just gonna be about that. It was gonna be like the world around the X-Men. So you started getting things like the Friends of Humanity and like The Right and all that kind of stuff. He started getting like all these crazy organizations. Project Wide Awake was one of the earliest iterations. And that actually went all the way back to really like Uncanny X-Men in the late 90s, like in the like 96, 97, 98, with like Bolivar Trask. Even Bolivar Trask predated that. Actually goes back to Stephen Lang. But I think he involved Bolivar Trask because Bolivar Trask was originally Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, or maybe it was Roy Thomas. And then like Chris Claremont made Stephen Lang, which kicked off the Phoenix Saga. But the whole thing behind this is that you ended up having this circumstance where Bolivar Trask had a son named Larry, and Larry was a mutant, and Bolivar Trask believed that mutants were a credible threat. And so what Bolivar Trask had done is he had gone to a guy named Judge Chalmers, and so like, he was a federal judge, and said, we need to create a commission that will investigate mutant kind and come to the conclusion, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that mutants are a credible threat to society. And that's exactly what happened. Judge Chalmers ordered like this 5-year study. This 5-year study came back and it said, mutants are a credible threat against society. We have to find some way to stem the mutant population, or like contain and control it. And so this led directly into the formation of Project Wide Awake. And Project Wide Awake was basically, kind of given by the president, but it was really pushed by Senator Robert Kelly, right? Like Senator Robert Kelly was like, okay, like mutants are dangerous guys, like, because he was super anti-mutant back in the day. He's like, mutants are really dangerous guys. He was getting up on his speaker polls and his re-election campaigns and so on and so forth, saying, we have to deal with the mutant threat. And if the president's not going to do it, then I will. And because the president was running for a second term, the president basically pushed through the commission for Project Wide Awake, which was headed by Henry Peter Geier, who worked for the National Security Council, Valerie Cooper, there was like another judge, Pietri or something like that. And then you had Raven Darkholme, actually Mystique, who was operating as part of like a hidden hand in the government, keeping an eye and learning what it was, because she was leading her own brotherhood of evil mutants at the time. And that led into like from 134 to 135, that eventually led into Days of Future Past, where like when Mystique realized what was happening with Project Wide Awake, she was like, well, we have to show them they can't threaten us like that. So we're going to take out Senator Robert Kelly. We're going to take out Moore McTaggart, Charles Xavier. And that kicked off Days of Future Past. So that's why that happened, it was in a response to Project Wide Awake. It was a 20-issue long theme that led into that main story itself. But you had like a bunch of other people who were involved, but there were like all these intelligence organizations, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, like state sheriff's office, unidentified intelligence agencies, the whole 9 yards. And it was all about like monitoring and controlling the mutant threat. That's how all that came into existence. And that's where the Mutant Registration Act came from. So that was the original indication for Project Wide Awake. What Grevioux did with Blue Marvel is he came back and he said, because of Blue Marvel, because of the fact that there are heroes out there, or various people with superpowers out there who may not necessarily ally themselves with the federal government wanted to launch Project Wide Awake as a way to basically contain and control those and monitor those who were deemed a threat. And then when mutants began to rise to prominence, then the focus shifted to them. And so because of that, Tony Stark's just like, this is ridiculous. Like, you have a guy who was here to save the world and you asked him to step down because he was a black guy. Like, you guys were so ass backwards in the 1960s. And so because of that, like, Tony Stark leaves, he's disgusted, and he's like, we have to find this guy. Like, this guy deserves an apology for how bad his country screwed him over. And so you end up finding out that Adam Brashear has a teaching job now, and he's basically married to this chick. Well, then you start getting into the past of this chick. You start digging, like Tony Stark and people start digging into her past. Come to find out, when the federal government asked him to step down, they assigned her to monitor him, to like basically find him, to be his girlfriend, and to report back to the federal government on what Adam Brashear was doing. She eventually fell in love with him, and the two got married. But as soon as he found out what was going on, like as soon as Tony Stark meets Adam Brashear, says, hey, look, like this guy Anti-Man is back. He kicked all of our asses. We need your help because like apparently you're the only one who could stop him. You end up having like Adam Brashear, who finds out that his wife was basically a spy for like a huge portion of their marriage and never told him, and he just leaves her. And then eventually she goes on and dies. She dies at the hands of Anti-Man, I think. But it's like, dude, this guy got screwed over at like every turn. But eventually he goes back to being a superhero. And then of course he faces off against Anti-Man. Anti-Man's defeated, and that's the end of that. But like Anti-Man, like at that point when the story was written, like at that point when he showed up in the present day, his powers had increased exponentially. So Connor Sims was almost godlike in terms of how powerful he was. I mean, could he defeat Galactus? I don't know. I don't know. I don't care. But like, you know, like he was really, really powerful in terms of all the abilities that he had. But Adam Brashear's powers are basically limitless. They have the potential to be well, not really limitless, but they're massive in scope. And the reason why is because he is what's called a living antimatter reactor. So in Marvel Comics, here's what you have. Let's take like the main Marvel universe, right? Where like you have have the Incredible Hulk and Reed Richards and the X-Men and so on and so forth. That's the positive matter universe. Then you have what's called the negative zone, which is just like this whole other universe that every other universe can access. That's nothing more than antimatter. There's kind of like this barrier in between that you have to pass through. You actually have to reverse your polarity. When the Fantastic Four enter into the negative zone, they have to like reverse the polarity of their physical bodies. Otherwise, they would disintegrate as soon as they went in because, you know, it's antimatter meeting positive matter. And so what ended up happening here is Adam Brashear and Connor Sims were two guys who were working together, and the goal was to create a kind of energy reactor that would create infinite energy in the world by tapping into that sort of space between the positive and antimatter universes. And the reason why is because it's self-replicating. So long as the antimatter universe exists and the positive matter universe exists or universes exist, then that energy will always be there. It would take the death of the universe, or really the death of the multiverse, in order for that energy to run out. And so because of that, they're like, this is infinite energy forever. Like, we would solve the world's energy crises. The problem was that the machine eventually went awry. Adam Brashear became like the perfect version, where he basically is an antimatter reactor, meaning he draws on all the antimatter in the negative zone, and then Connor Sims just kind of dissipated. And so Connor Sims is like an unstable situation. He's really, really, really powerful, but he can't stay in the positive matter universe for any real measure of time. And so like his powers are super, super high end, and like he's exceedingly strong and all, you know, durable and all that kind of stuff, but you don't really see him that often. Most recently, you saw him in the Ultimates, in all new, all different Ultimates, when he became a Herald of Galactus, and that basically balanced him out, and Galactus fixed him, for lack of a better word. But Adam Brashear is insane. Like, he's super smart. He destroyed King Hyperion. Like, he defeated King Hyperion. If you guys don't know who King Hyperion is, he's a hero from a different universe who killed all the cosmic entities and all the Earth superheroes and conquered the universe. Like, dude, the guy was insane. King Hyperion was wildly powerful. Blue Marvel successfully defeated him. But dude, he is awesome because he's basically like, imagine Superman and Black Panther merged into one character, and that's a lot of what Adam Brashear is. But like, he's super intelligent, like he has all these abilities. He actually operates under the ocean. It's kind of cool. He has like a base of operations under there. He led his own Mighty Avengers team. The guy is a powerhouse. Like, he is an absolute beast. And I would love to see him in the MCU because it would be insane. Like, I mean, just not even the superhero aspect. I mean, like, Superman's powers are a dime a dozen. Everybody has those. What's really cool about Adam Brashear is his knowledge of like theoretical physics and all that kind of stuff. Basically, you could take what he knows, apply it to space, and then build out the space side of the MCU by having Blue Marvel lead the charge. It would be so cool. Like, it would be so awesome. And I'd love to see his character because it would balance out like all the intelligent people. But still, like, I think it'd be awesome. I think it'd be a pretty cool set of events to see. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.